This talk is for people who want to make a difference. It's an invitation to imagine a future in which people and the ecological systems we're part of can flourish. I hope to convince you, if you don't know it already, that working towards a positive future like this can be personally fulfilling, good for people in your circle of care, your family, your work colleagues, your community, and so on. Now, the process of change I'm advocating is like the flight of the godwit, the kuaka. The kuaka flies from the Arctic Circle to New Zealand, crossing the hemispheres. The godwit manages this amazing feat by using the tailwinds to help propel it on its journey. I love this metaphor because I believe that the world is on the winds of change, and we can use the currents that are going our way, work with those to create a better world in a way that's enriching for ourselves and those around us. I'm also suggesting that you understand and work with your own reality. Sustainability has often been described as a complex, a messy, or a wicked problem. Now, these problems are characterised by a lot of disagreement over what we think the solution to them is, let alone how we get there. Some of you may feel that technological solutions are the answer. We'll have hydrogen-fuelled cars, we'll have carbon storage, and so on. Others may feel that we need to go local, plant gardens, become friends with our neighbours, head for the hills, set up new communities. This disagreement might seem scary and incapacitating, but to me it is liberating. If no one has the solution, it means we can all potentially contribute something of value, as long as we listen to our core values and work from a position of good faith. So throughout this talk, I invite you to think about yourself, what you can contribute, and the groups that you belong to, your family, your community groups, your schools, your workplace. What can you do to contribute towards leadership and creating a flourishing future? I'm going to offer 3 core ideas that come from the latest thinking and research in psychology. The first idea is that people are happiness seekers. By happiness, I mean all those things that feel good. Positive emotions like joy and contentment, novelty and stimulation. We want to grow year by year, feel satisfied with ourselves and feel that other people approve of us. Now, happiness is probably an evolutionary signal to suggest that we continue with an activity, or we repeat it, we do it again. I've chosen the metaphor of a moth being attracted to a flame to illustrate the way in which people are attracted to happiness. The bottom line is, as change agents, if we don't offer people happiness, they won't be attracted to what we do and they won't stick with the activity that we're offering. Now, not only this, but happiness also brings out very important qualities in people. And I'd like to discuss 3 of these now: creativity, cooperation, and openness to change. There have been a range of fascinating studies in psychology that show how positive emotions encourage creativity. Many of these are experimental in nature. One group receives a positive boost through things like nice food, funny cartoons, pleasant music, even a nice smell, and the second group does not. Then the differences between them on a creative task are compared. I'd like to give you one example. In this study, positive emotions were created for one group by getting them to watch TV bloopers which had them laughing. In a second group, they had to watch a very boring film about geometry called Area Under the Curve. Then they were asked to solve this problem. How do you attach a candle to a wall and light it in such a way that the wax doesn't drip onto the floor when it burns? To solve this problem, they were given the following equipment: a candle, some drawing pins, and a box of matches. Now, the solution to the problem is that you put the candle inside the matchbox, attach that to the wall, and then light it. 75% of those who watched the TV bloopers got the solution, but only 20% of those who watched the maths film did so. What this suggests is that positive emotions encourage creativity. They encourage us to think outside the box, or in this case, inside the box. Research has also shown that people are better at cooperative tasks in a positive environment. Positivity can be created by the sorts of things I've discussed before, but also just by people being encouraging towards one another. In one study, businesses were asked to identify their high, medium, and low performance teams. These teams were then watched in action by the researchers. What they found was in the high performance teams, there was an average of 5 to 1 positive to negative comments. In the medium performance teams, the average was 2 positive to 1 negative comment. In the low performance teams, this was reversed, with an average of 2 negative comments to every positive comment. So what this suggests is that positivity is productive in terms of collective tasks as well as individual tasks. We're also more open to change in an atmosphere of positivity. One study, for example, found that if women were given potentially threatening information about their health, in this case the possible dangers of caffeine, found that they were more willing to look at this information if prior to that they'd filled in a questionnaire which asked them to list the ways in which they'd been nice to people recently. This left them feeling good and strong about themselves, and so they were willing to consider a possible lifestyle change. This is a paradox of human nature, and it's when we're feeling good about ourselves, positive, that we're willing to consider that perhaps we could do things differently. So how do we work with people as happiness seekers? Well, first, if we want people to be attracted to and stick with our change initiatives, we've got to offer them activities that create positive emotions. Second, if we work in an atmosphere of positivity, we'll bring out the creativity, cooperation, and openness to change that we're going to need to create a flourishing future. Third, by working in a positive way, you'll create immediate well-being for yourself and those around you. The second core idea is that people are social. There's a great deal of evidence that people are natural imitators. Babies, just a few days old, have been shown to be able to imitate an adult's facial gestures. Children have been shown to imitate each other and adults. In one famous study, some children watched an adult behaving aggressively towards an inflated Bobo doll. When they were later allowed to play with the Bobo doll, they too tended to behave aggressively towards it. This was different from children who'd watched the adults sit quietly playing with toys next to the Bobo doll, who didn't show such aggression. And it doesn't just stop because we're grown up. There's also evidence that adults imitate each other, both consciously and unconsciously. This has been called the chameleon effect. Chameleons are reptiles that change colour to blend with the environment. People change their behaviour to blend with the social environment that they are in. So we copy what we see, both as children and as adults. This may have something to do with how our brains work, specifically mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are brain cells that fire both when we see and when we do a behaviour. This suggests that doing and viewing are part of overlapping brain processes. That's a pretty cool idea, because it means when I do something, your brain is to some extent mimicking what mine's doing, and vice versa. When you do something, my brain is mimicking that, suggesting that we find it almost irresistible sometimes to copy each other. We don't just copy what we see, we also copy what we think is normal behaviour in a particular setting. For example, from this picture, can you see what's normal behaviour to do with your rubbish? Clearly it is normal to drop it on the ground. Now, one study found that in a littered environment, in fact when given litter, 32% of people dropped it on the ground. When the same environment was cleaned up, only 14% of people dropped that piece of litter on the ground. Again, suggesting that they are responding to the behavioural trace of what is normal. Stories are a third mechanism for transmitting behaviour. Take the rise of anorexia in Hong Kong. Researchers have suggested that anorexia used to be a relatively rare disease in Hong Kong and outside the Western world, and wasn't associated with the fat phobia that we have in the West. Then, in Hong Kong, a young girl died of it on the street, and Western psychiatrists were brought in to explain to the news media what anorexia was all about. They described the Western version, including the fat phobia, the fear that you're fatter than you are, the fear of putting on weight if you eat anything. Two things happened in Hong Kong as a result of this. First, the rates of anorexia rose, and secondly, it became associated with the fat phobia we associate it with in the West. So this suggests even something deeply personal and intimate, like how we display distress, can be learnt from stories that are transmitting in our society around us. Now, the rise of anorexia in Hong Kong is a tale of terror. It's a tale about what we shouldn't do. There are many tales of terror about the environment, that we are out of control consumers, filling the oceans with plastic, taking in toxins with every breath, pumping dangerous levels of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. These tales do describe real problems, but to endlessly repeat them to each other is to breathe life into a tale of terror, to make it seem like the inevitable and obvious way to be a person in our time, which is a dangerous tactic for a species set up to imitate. So how do we work with people as social imitators? Well, the important lesson in the research that I've just discussed is that if we see unsustainable behaviours modelled around us all the time and talk about these, then it's going to be very hard for people to behave differently. So what we want to do is make visible those behaviours that you think will be part of a flourishing future. First, you can do this in your own practices. If you are concerned about climate change, then why not drive a small car, take the bus, ride your bike, walk to work, and why not make it obvious to others that this is what you're doing? The same applies to organisations. How about putting your cycle racks out the front of the building? People can then see others coming and going, and the racks themselves can act as a behavioural trace that cycling is something we do around here. A third suggestion is telling tales of joy about the things people are doing that are positive for the environment and for human flourishing. One wonderful example is Matthew and Waveney's Rubbish Free Year blog, which you can see, and they talk about their year in minimising waste going to landfill. The third core idea is that people want to be good. Studies of children's moral development all over the world show that there are two key principles that underlie their thinking about moral issues. One is that we should protect innocent others, and the second is fairness. We should be fair in how we deal with people. Now, when behaviours are considered to be part of the moral domain, they're held in place by very powerful emotions. We feel shame or guilt if we breach our own moral principles, and we feel anger towards other people that do so. These are very important drivers of behaviour. Now, different cultures put different behaviours in the moral domain. They interpret the principles differently. In our culture, it's considered fair for someone to earn 100 or 1,000 times more than another person. We justify that by saying they've earned it somehow. They've made wise decisions. They got a good education. In other cultures, however, this would be seen as unacceptable, an unimaginable breach of the fairness principle. So how do we work with people's desire to be good? Well, one way is to frame the issues that you care about in moral terms. This has been done for my daughter at her school. She doesn't think that you shouldn't litter because someone else might have to clean up after you. She thinks you shouldn't litter because if you do so, you can create a moral disturbance. How does it work? Drop a piece of rubbish on the ground, it might go into a drain, end up in the sea, and then it might suffocate a dolphin, harm to an innocent other. In keeping with the whole idea of positivity, I really suggest that we frame these things as ways to protect innocent others, dolphins and people, and also as ways to promote social justice. People really want to live in accordance with their deepest values. By having these discussions, we give people the opportunity to do so. Another option is to have deep-level discussions of your values as an organisation or as a community group. In the book, I provide a storytelling exercise that can help you to do this. I think it's really important that we discuss these things in community because we tend to hold our moral issues together as a collective group. The last part of the book is a self-help guide that allows you to think about the possibilities for action at 3 levels. The lifestyle level, what you're doing in your own life, the organisational level, and finally the civic level. In my own life, I try and live an eco lifestyle. I cycle to work, we have a garden, I'm careful about what we purchase. I favour second-hand, local and fair trade. At the organisational level, I'm a member of Transition Point Chevalier, a transition town, part of the worldwide movement. And at the University of Auckland, I belong to several sustainability initiatives. At the civic level, I make submissions to local council on issues that are important to me. I sign petitions, I go on marches, I'm supportive of many political events. Now, I offer this not to suggest that I'm some kind of champion, but as my own imperfect tale of joy, and the hope that we can all work together to create a better world.